Welcome to Jets Rewind, and I'm Marty Schupak. I'm joined by Ralph Schrager and Ray Clifford, and we're here in the aftermath after the Jets just lost their fifth game in a row. And I'm beside myself, like you wouldn't believe. How you doing, Ray?
Uh, I mean, the way things were going, I didn't think Mike White was going to be, a savior necessarily. But I was hopeful, but he was rusty. He still looked like the ribs were bothering him. So I wasn't super surprised by the outcome.
Ralph, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing all right. Like I said before we went on the air, sometimes those close losses are more painful than this. This one, I was resigned early in the third quarter, so
Right. Yeah. Well, you guys got to listen to me for a couple of minutes because I'm just totally so upset with this organization and this coach. And I'll tell you, I'm not a huge Woody Johnson fan, but if I was Woody Johnson and he has a right, I would call in Robert Saleh to my office, shut the door, sit him down, and I would say to him, "What have you been doing with the last 10 days?" And just shut my mouth and see what he says. Because what they put on the field after having 10 days to prepare was a disgrace. From that opening play of the game to special teams to everywhere else, it was pathetic. It was slop. I've never seen anything so bad. I've never been so disappointed in my team. And then to hear Robert Saleh say in his press conference that as far as the rushing defense, it was only one big play. One big play. They gave up 198 yards on the ground, and I'm not putting this on the defense that much, really, to be honest with you. But I mean, he must think we're idiots, and I don't want to get rid of them. But I sent you guys some stuff on some assistant coaches, which we'll get into. But I just can't believe his reaction and the Jets, the biggest game of the year, their chance to keep the season alive. I don't want to hear that the Patriots won before they took the field. It was just a disgrace, up and down, from coaches to players to everything. It was pathetic. And the people I felt the worst for, those Jet fans that they kept showing, if some of those people came from the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, I feel horrible that they went all the way up to Seattle to watch that crap. It was such crap. I could not believe it. And well, I'll ask Ray right out, Ray. We're on a 5-game losing streak. Who would you put the responsibility on? Oh, one more thing, too. I'm not a Zach Wilson lover, but I don't want to hear any of these people blaming the 5-game losing streak on Zach Wilson. And I don't want to hear people, the Zach Wilson, they call them truthers, come out and say it would have been different if Zach Wilson played. No, it would not have been different. Ray, who do you put the blame on for this 5-game losing streak?
Well, there are plenty of directions you can point. The last one would be the defense. So not that the defense was great, but they've kept us in every game, and they give up 23 points by the end, but they kept us in that game for the most part. They didn't play good at the beginning. That was pretty much standard for a lot of the games, come out slow and get better. But to me, it's a mix of things. It's not any one specific thing. The coaching was bad at times. The offensive line has been an issue all year, and I always rant about the offensive line because I don't think we've taken care of it enough. And then quarterback play obviously has been an issue. Now I would disagree that I would blame Zach for some of those losses. I would point at him among other things. He was not good enough. I think if Mike White hadn't hurt his ribs, I think we had a much better shot in any of these last 3 games. But and then Saleh, I wonder if in that 10-day break, if he took the same attitude he took in the preseason. I want the guys fresh, so I'm not gonna really go at it hard. I'm gonna let them take it easy. You know, I disagreed with that from the beginning, and I still disagree with it. I think it's part of the, you know, why we had a slow start to the season, and why I think that injuries happen, but I think the less you really go at things hard and go too easy, you're not ready for full contact. And I think that is, you know, a result of him wanting guys fresh at the end of the year. So not taking it, you know, taking it easy on him too much in the preseason. So I think you can point a lot of directions. And I don't think you'd be wrong on pretty much any of them, but the least blame I would give is the defense.
Okay. And Ralph, I want to hear what you say, but before we do, I just want to ask Ray as a follow-up, Ray, was it a huge mistake, not just hiring, I'm not going to say it was a mistake hiring Robert Saleh, but having a rookie, with a rookie coach, having a rookie OC and a rookie DC? You think that was a mistake, having all three as rookies?
I think that was a little bit of it. I still think Lafleur's, you know, got a lot of improvement to do. I thought Ulbrich improved, but you know, when guys are doing their first time around at anything, and all three of them are doing their first time around, you're going to have, you know, issues with, you know, different things. You know, Saleh's got enough on his plate to not have anybody as a veteran, as a coach, I think is a, you know, a tough task anyway. You know, being a head coach your first time, it's probably nice to have a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator with some expertise, who's experience, who you can kind of rely on and not have to be keeping, you know, track of the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. Ralph, give me your reaction about who's responsible for this 5-game losing streak.
Well, I definitely feel like the defense, yes, they started slowly yesterday, and they've had that happen in many games. I don't know why their energy is not there, but I think the cumulative effect of their offense, not just not scoring points, but not getting first downs, 3 and outs. A defense just can't maintain that over the course of a year. And the crazy thing is, the thing that's most annoying is once in a while when they would get a nice play, a 15 or 20-yard chunk, you know, I watched Jacksonville and Detroit, the way they were keeping the Jets off balance, you know, throwing. But with Lafleur, he gets that one nice chunk play, goes right back to a run up the middle, 1 yard, 5-yard penalty, the next play a sack, and we're 3rd and 21 as usual. And he just doesn't, there's no flow, there's no momentum that he takes advantage of. A perfect example is the Jacksonville game, when at the beginning of the game, Quinton Williams strip sacks the quarterback, Lawrence. And I just said to myself, get in there, make a big play, go after it right now. And what does he do? 2 runs up the middle and a sack. It's like, he just, I don't know whether he doesn't have the guts to do it, or he doesn't have the creativity. It's very frustrating. I think the offense obviously gets the vast majority of the blame. Mike White yesterday showed me that he's just another body out there. I know his ribs might be bothering him. I was at a bar watching several games, the San Francisco Vegas game. The starting quarterbacks were Brock Purdy and Jarrett Stidham, a couple of late rounders, and they both were lighting it up. So Mike White, he had some nice games, but he's nothing special. There are a lot of Mike Whites out there, as far as I'm concerned.
Ralph, let me just say this while you catch your breath and take a drink of water or something. But, and you know, Mike White, and part of it might have been his motivation to get on the field, because he probably thought, and his agent thought, if he really lit it up, he would have made a lot of money yesterday. No doubt about it. So, I mean, he'll say everything he can that it's for the team and everything else, but I think it's a combination, and I love his personality. I don't know how much the ribs played into it. I don't think they played in that much, but I just don't think he's the answer at all long term.
No, unfortunately, I agree with you on that. I thought we were all a little excited. We might have had something. The pass protection was not as horrible as it has been. It wasn't good, but there were enough chances, pockets for him he was just off on every pass.
Yeah.
I'll say the ribs were part of the problem, maybe the rust, but you can just see the physical limitations of the guy, the arm, the quickness of the release, and of course the foot speed. To me, he's limited. If you put him on a dynamite team with a dynamite offensive line and talented skill players, he'd probably be fine, like a lot of quarterbacks that we see who are backup quarterbacks. But long term, no, I don't know. The question, we don't think he is. I don't know if the Jets are going to invest in him or not. It's going to be very interesting. The whole question of Zach Wilson's going to be very interesting. We'll get into that later in the show. But if you're asking me, who's to blame for the collapse of this team, obviously, a lot of people are to blame. I'd say the offensive line and the offensive coordinator, to me, are number 1 and 2.
Okay, and while we're on Mike Lafleur, I had given you guys, and I probably could have expanded this list of 3 assistant coaches. I just would like your opinion, if you think, in your opinion, not if they will come back, but if you think they should come back. I'll start with Ray. We'll go through all 3. Ray, Brent Boyd, the special teams coach.
Yeah, I mean, those 2 punt returns were both killers, but I still would bring him. All in all, I think the special teams, that he's done a good job. He had better years last year and the year before, but I'm not going to hold 2 punt returns against him for his whole entire job now. And Braden Mann's Braden Mann. I don't blame him for how he's punting. He's dealing with whoever they put on the team.
But Ray, I hate to interrupt you, but I said this. I said this on the last 2 Minute Tuesday. After they lost to Jacksonville, I said they have 10 days. I'd be shocked if the Jets don't bring in a couple of punters just to look at in those 10 days.
Okay, but that's Douglas. That's not Brent Boyer. Brent Boyer doesn't decide who comes in or doesn't come in.
I understand that, but I'm guessing that Douglas, I mean, he had some say in it. Okay, so all right, so you're taking that off him, and
I'm not going to
have that. Okay, I understand
you're
that.
a GM, then you don't need Brent Boyer to tell you Braden Mann's struggling. So he should know. He should. Brent Boyer shouldn't even have to ask Joe if he wants to do that.
Then that's on Joe Douglas. He's got to.
I think it is.
He's got to do a better job. If anything, just to show him that there's competition waiting there.
I agree with you.
You know what I mean?
I think they should have, but I don't put that on Boyer. I put it on Joe Douglas.
What about your favorite, Mike Lafleur?
I think Salah's really got to bite the bullet and decide: do I stick with my best friend's brother, or do I give him? Do I put him on a short leash? If not, take it away from him. I would be okay if they took it away from him, but something's got to change. He's either got to. And honestly, I told you this, when we were talking after the one. I think he should quit calling his brother for advice, because I watched that Packer game and his brother made some very, very, they were reminiscent of Jet calls. I'll say it that way. I was like, oh, that's where that stuff came from. He made some calls when Green Bay had the ball inside the 5 that just was like, I'm scratching my head going, that looks like something Mike would have called. So,
well, let's say you are Robert Saleh. Well, you have a choice. And you could get rid of him. Would you do that?
I don't know
let me make it easy for you. Okay. Frank Reich is out there. He's interested in coming to New York. His way in is offensive coordinator. If it's between Frank Reich and Mike Lafleur, what would you do, Coach?
Well, I think a lot of the problem is that he's the brother of his buddy. But personally, I would, at the very least, bring in Frank Reich as the main guy, and have LaFleur work with him to kind of maybe learn from him. I don't think I necessarily would get rid of him. Sometimes he shows some creativity. He's just not consistent with it. He'll do something like Ralph said. He makes one great play, and then he goes back to this formula of run up the middle and and get us in second and third and longs, and then we're back to, long third down, and then who knows what the call is going to be, but it never seems to be the
Right.
good one. So
Okay.
I wouldn't get rid of him, but I might say you're now the assistant, and you're going to learn from this guy and see how he develops.
Right. Do you think it's well? Let's finish this list. I'll get back to because the Mike Lafleur thing is just fascinating because of the family situation and the nepotism involved. But how about Rob Calabrese, the quarterback coach?
No, I don't think based on our quarterback play, I wouldn't mind looking for a new one. That wouldn't, I'd at least be looking around because I haven't seen any development out of our quarterbacks.
Okay. All right, Ralph, quickly, let's go through the list with you, and then we'll talk about spend some time talking about Mike Lafleur. Brent Boyd is special teams coach.
Brent Boyd, I could go either way with, with special teams and special teams players, they're like relief pitchers. You never know what you're going to get from year to year. It's sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So I'm going to be wishy-washy on that one. I don't really care because I'm just years of trying to figure out special teams.
All right, let's go. I'll tell you, I'm going to skip to Calabrese, then we'll come back to Lafleur. We'll all talk
Calabrese, without question, I would get rid of. I would have gotten rid of him last year. I don't, it was a horrible thing that happened with Greg Knapp. That's 2 years ago, though, now. And Calabrese has shown he has absolutely no clue on how to develop a quarterback.
I get sick and tired, and no offense to the Knapp family, but whenever I hear that as part of the development of Zach Wilson as an excuse, I'm so sick and tired of that, to be honest with you.
I don't really hear it very much.
I do.
It might have had an effect at first, but Calabrese has had 2 years and has done nothing with him. He's not the whole problem, but he clearly doesn't know what he's doing as far as developing him goes.
Well, wait a minute, but wasn't Matt Cavanaugh there last year?
Yeah, he was there part-time, and they also brought him back. But this is the guy who was here this year. And if anything, he regressed. He doesn't have much of a resume. And, I overhear this nonsense about how Salah said teams are looking at him as a possible offensive coordinator. I don't know.
They say that about everybody.
They say that about everybody. It's like, anyway, yes, I would get rid of him in a heartbeat.
Okay, let's get to Mike Lafleur. Then, Ray, you chirp in too. Go ahead, Ralph. What's your take?
Yes. He's not going to get rid of him, but I would. I think, Frank Reich. There are other guys. I mean, I just see such nice creativity with some of these other offensive coordinators. I think 2 years is enough. If I'm Sal, my job is on the line. If the offense doesn't get any better, like I said, I think he's going to stick with him. But I would get rid of him. Yeah.
What do you think would happen if Woody Johnson went to Sal and said, "We need some changes. I want a new offensive coordinator. And if you're not going to change it, I'm going to get a new head coach." What would Sal do?
I don't know what Sal would do. I know some head coaches who were really secure and know they could get another job might say no. A guy who's young like Sal and doesn't have the resume right now, I don't know what he'd do. I know Sal is, it seems like he's pretty comfortable with himself. Ego-wise, that's a hypothetical. I don't know. That's a good question, Marty. I don't think Woody Johnson's there yet. One more year, maybe. I don't see that happening this year.
Let me say this, and I wasn't affected at all because I'm one of these Jet fans. I actually like the Giants. I don't follow them as close as I follow the Jets, but I like the Giants. And I'm telling you, I've heard some undercurrents that he was beside himself, that the Jets played the way they did on the same day that the Giants secured a playoff berth with a rookie coach. Don't think that these things don't bother Woody Johnson. Don't forget, he goes into a building, or he used to actually, where they had the trophies out in front of him. So I think that's a huge thing. And I think he might approach him and try to put pressure on him. That's my feeling. Ray, you like my bum list I come up with all the time, right? It changes day to day.
Chuckle.
Yeah. So I put it together really quick, and then I put that. I wanted your input after that. But before I got to do a shout out I have two shout outs. I'll do one now. My wife and I were at a grocery store in New Jersey. I heard a guy singing a familiar song, but it was different. Turned out it was a guy walking around with a microphone. So Neil Dankman, a huge Jet fan, great entertainer. And I just want to say hi to Neil. He's listening to the podcast now. All right, back to the bum list. Here we go, Ray. Marty's bum list, which is incomplete and always changes, as you know.
Incomplete. That's a good word for yesterday.
Yeah. Braden Mann, don't let the door hit you on the way out. What a disappointment. What a bum. That bad punt, it looked like at first it was almost blocked or partially blocked. It wasn't. Braxton Berrios, go to New England if you want. I could get another player that lets a ball bounce from the 18-yard line to the 1-yard line. He's awful. He's just, it's just unbelievable. 1 year to the next, how good he was last year. Lakeland Tomlinson, can't stand you. The amount of money we're paying you, it's embarrassing. George Fan, how many times are we going to see a guy go around you untouched? I can't wait to get rid of you. And Ashton Davis, the reason I have him there, because I love this guy, and Ralph loved him, Pinnock. And I believe that it was between Pinnock and Ashton Davis who they're going to keep. And sure enough, Pinnock goes on the Giants. He's in the playoffs, and we're stuck with Ashton Davis. And thank God that they ended up picking up Tony Adams, because when LaMarcus Jordan went out, they didn't even look to Ashton Davis. They put in Tony Adams right away, and he was one of the few bright spots. So that's my bum list so far. So Ray, go ahead. You could add to it or comment on it.
Well, Barrios, I'm not as mad at. I mean, I don't think that was a good decision to let it go. My problem with Barrios is I'd rather see him less on the field for, running passing plays and more of Elijah Moore or somebody else. They seem to rely on him too much at key moments when I think somebody else could make a play. But other than that, the punt return thing, we've always struggled with guys that sometimes can't even catch the damn ball. So I'm not as down on him as on that. He made a bad decision, but I don't. All in all, I don't mind that. But
he makes a bad decision or makes a stupid play every freaking week.
He was
he's really had some brain farts this year.
Catches that ball against Minnesota, we win the game.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think a couple of punts where like it went by him and he started chasing it and almost hit him, and I was like, "What is this guy thinking?" I don't know. He's not as sharp as he was.
And you loved him, Ralph.
I know.
He was great.
I'm very disappointed. I agree with you.
Very disappointed.
He runs this year. He's been running some out of the end zone. I was just like, "Why are you bringing it out?" And sure enough, he get like the 20-yard line. That part was.
Right, you're exactly right. Exactly right.
Let's quit running it out. Let's take the 25 and get moving.
All right.
Laken Tomlinson has been a big disappointment, but some guys, sometimes at new place, everything's different, and they settle down their second year. So I'll hold judgment on him a little bit.
He's not going to be back. Sorry. I'm sorry. Fant is the guy I said I was looking at. Go ahead.
And I'm fine with Fant being gone. I think by then we'll have Tucker back. We'll have hopefully Max Mitchell will be in the same form he was in before.
Don't say the name. I think you might say. I don't want to hear his name.
I don't even think about that. I don't know. He doesn't even come into my mind anymore.
Thank God, Ray.
I have no expectation. Well, if he's on the field on play number 1 next year, I'll be shocked. Not because they cut him even, just because he was actually healthy enough to make it through the preseason.
You got to look at him as a depth guy next year. That's all.
That's all you can do. You can't, rely on him.
Right.
That's why we've got to draft, 2 or 3 linemen, or at least pick up another one in free agency if we can afford to. I mean, right now our cap space is a little iffy, so we'll see after they make some cuts. But
anyone else you want to add? I have
both our safeties are always going to be on my bum list, even though once in a while, Whitehead makes a play, then he goes and thinks he's Ronnie Lott and tries to knock somebody off his feet and the guy runs the rest of the 50 yards for the touchdown or something. But and Joyner, I just don't. I wish he hadn't come back, but that's the main ones. I think we need. I'd say as much as he has in general a good year, Mosley, just drives me nuts because like yesterday he makes what looked like a good tackle after about 5 yards, and then the guy runs him over and goes another 4. And I'm just like, come on, we need these guys who can make the tackle at the point of contact, not give up 5 more yards, either them dragging them or not making the tackle at all.
I want to get to Ralph's reaction, and then I want to mention something too. But I saw I got some from Rich Samini at the beginning of the game that he saw Chris Strebler was on the special teams, the kickoff team. Did you notice that at all?
No.
If he was, that's great. I love it. I just
He's
love
pretty
it.
solid. He probably can, can hit every bit as hard as
he wants to stay up there. And Ralph,
He'll do anything.
I want your reaction to my bum list of the dishes. But before that, Ralph, Ray, thank God, has a good sense of humor, because every once in a while people send me these video clips. And of course, yesterday they sent me the video clip of Pete Rozelle announcing the #1 pick for the New York Jets, quarterback Ken O'Brien. So Ray writes back, is that a punishment for me or a punishment for you? Which I thought
O'Brien would look pretty good right now.
Oh my God. Absolutely. All right, Ralph, your reaction to my bum list so far.
Well, I mean, you guys basically covered everything. The only one you left out was Mike White, who to me had a lousy game. I was going to add to your bum list basically the whole offensive line, which just doesn't get any push at all. The Marcus Joyner, and Whitehead, I agree with Ray on those two guys. Yeah, Mosley missed a few tackles. Even my favorite tackler, Quincy Williams, fanned on one in the backfield. What he usually lays the guy out. So it was just one of those games.
We have a lot of one of those games.
Huh?
There's a lot of one of those games. It's unbelievable. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give. I'll instead of your bum list, there's maybe a couple of guys I'll give some kudos to. I thought Carl Lawson had a pretty good game yesterday.
Great game.
Not only did he get the sack, but on Franklin Myers, that was his sack too. And he was going against Charles Cross, and interestingly enough, the #1 pick, the 9th pick in the draft, right before Garrett Wilson, who didn't do very much yesterday. Yeah. They said he dropped that one at the end. I didn't think that was a tough catch. I don't know if I'm going to blame him for that. But he didn't do a whole
some earlier though.
Huh?
He dropped some earlier though.
At the very end though, one thing about Garrett Wilson, I didn't like his body language, and they threw him a pass. He didn't really make an effort to go for it. And actually that guy Woolen almost intercepted it.
Tariq Woolen,
And Garrett Wilson was just standing there. I was really shocked. I just want to mention
one more thing I'm going to mention, Marty, which I know is near and dear to your heart, is as much as we love Sauce Gardner, that guy tackles like an 8-year-old. He doesn't know what he's grabbing and flailing.
Thank God you mentioned that, because everyone on the radio, everything I hear is making such a big deal about who's the receiver he was covering. What's his name?
Deke Metcalf,
who had one reception for 6 yards. But if you watch closely, Sauce Gardner, some of his efforts on tackles were ridiculous. He fanned on at least 2, and I don't get it, because Ralph, you pointed out when he was at Cincinnati, he was a pretty good run stopper.
And I've seen him stick some guys this year too, but there were times when he just, I don't know what he's doing out there. He's well, what was I going to say? But the interesting thing is that Tariq Woolen. I don't know who's having the better year between those two guys. I know we just discussed that before, but it was so funny. Sauce Gardner a couple of weeks ago was annoyed with Detroit. He said he was not being respected because they weren't throwing at him.
Right.
Thinking, what is this guy thinking?
I agree.
Ultimate compliment, and the less you get thrown at, the less you get exposed.
Yeah. Right. Well, one of the reasons he said was because he's from Detroit.
Right. Yeah.
And he wanted to show the fans. Oh, so hey, Ray, Believe it or not, I'm going to be one of the few people that's going to be in front of the TV set watching the Jets when they're in Miami. That's just the way I am,
Oh, I'll watch.
and I'll be rooting for them. But who do you think should be the starting quarterback? Before that, though, Ralph, I mentioned also kudos. I thought Tony Adams played a pretty good game.
Tony Adams, interesting player. I want to
Good
see
players.
more of him. Hopefully next week he'll start. I don't know what happened to Joyner, but even if Joyner's healthy, they got to check some of these new players out and find
Right.
out what they have. Yeah.
And that's a good lead into this for Ray. Who should start a quarterback against Miami?
Well, it depends on if Salah's wanting to try and end on a high note or not. But I mean, I know as bad as it sounds, it's not at home. I would put Zach in there. I would get him in there and get him just one more game before the season's up, and not the home crowd booing pressure kind of thing. And so, and just tell them, go out and play your game and, actually try and have some fun, look like you're enjoying yourself, and let her rip. Go out there, get some time in, and and then we'll start working on next year. That's
Right.
what I do.
Yep, I agree. We're going to talk about and we've talked about this.
By the
for-
way, I just want to chime in. I'm surprised. I agree with you. I think Wilson should start next week.
I
And
agree.
I also think Salah should go to Lafleur and say, open the offense up.
Yeah.
I don't care what happens. Let's see what this guy can do. Let's throw everything at him and
Right.
hopefully get an idea, because frankly, I don't think we've seen the last of Zach Wilson on the Jets.
I don't
Right.
think so.
No. I did not get rid of him right now. And Ralph, I want him to bring up who's that 6'3" receiver on the practice squad I like,
Oh,
Charles.
Irvin Charles.
Irvin Charles. I wanted to bring him up. Quickly, I'm just going to mention a few names. I'll mention a name and I'll go to each of you. You tell me if you think they're going to be around next year. We're going to do this a dozen times. Corey Davis, Ray, is he going to be on the team next year? Ralph.
No.
Dwayne Brown, Ralph,
No.
Ray.
I'd like to say no, but until I see we take care of the line either through the draft or free agency, I don't know that we can afford to get rid of him.
Okay, here's one for you, Ray. Denzel Mims. Yes or no?
I'll say yes.
Ralph.
I think they're gonna, if they get rid of Davis, I think they're gonna keep
Yeah.
Mims.
That's-
Yeah, he's still on the cheap for another year, I believe.
All right. Okay, Ralph. Connor McGovern. Yes or no?
Oh, that is such a tough one. I think they're gonna keep him. I kind of wish they wouldn't. You can draft centers and they start playing good ball pretty early in their career. You see a few of them in the Landon Dickinson, the kid from Iowa, Humphreys.
Yeah.
Reed Humphreys. So I think they can replace him.
Ray. Connor McGovern.
I think he'll be there. He might be depth, but I think he'll be there.
Okay, there you go. Here's one for you, Ray. Sheldon Rankins.
Yeah. Is he? What's his cap hit?
Was he playing yesterday?
Yeah, he got pushed back on that long run.
I mean, they seem to like him. I could see him keeping him if he's not killing us on the cap, but otherwise, no. Well,
How old is he now? Is he 32?
No, he's not that old. He's in
No.
his. He's probably late
I know
20s.
Ralph likes him. What do you think, Ralph?
I think they're going to keep him. Sal likes his depth on defense.
Ralph,
Line.
Nathan Shepard, your favorite. The man with 9 lives.
I think they're going to keep him. He's like Brent Boyer. He's just around.
Ray, Nathan Shepard.
Yeah, until I see otherwise. I didn't think he'd be there this year. So,
All right. Okay. And I'm going to end up with one. Here's the last one, because I think he's a free agent. And I'll start with Ray. It's Ralph's favorites, Quincy Williams, Ray. Will he be a Jet next year?
Yes.
Okay. Ralph.
Absolutely. I think they like him and
I
they're
do
going to
too.
sign him. And anyway, they got to keep Quinnen happy, right?
That's it. All right. Let's get, we're going to close this out, but I want to talk about the quarterback options for 23, which we're going to be dissecting that all year. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add from the Seattle game. One thing I want to mention,
Yeah, I have one thing I want to add.
I just want to say a listener pointed out to me, and he's a good listener, John Miller, and I knew this, that Geno Smith throws his interceptions when he's blitzed. The league knows it. It's happened all year, and we didn't blitz him at all. And we don't know, is that going back to when Queen and Williams went crazy, when they were blitzing a lot? And John thought maybe that they should have been blitzing, and I happen to agree with him. But go ahead, Ralph. What's your thoughts on the game?
On that play when the punt that Barrios let get down to the 1 yard line, that was late in the first half, I believe. And also I'm mixing it up with, but they were backed up before the first half with about a minute left on the 1 yard line. I believe that was, and shock of shock. I'm thinking they're in trouble here because the other team had some timeouts, and he throws 2 passes on the first 2 plays, which I thought was great.
Yes.
And I was like, why is he he does that in that situation, and he won't do it like in the middle of the field? I mean, it boggles my mind.
I agree. It didn't. Yeah, I agree. I was happy he did it, but I agree. It's like too little, too late. Ray, any thoughts on the Seattle game?
I was just the opposite. I'm like, what are you thinking? I thought that was like disaster written all over it. I'm like, you got to be kidding.
As usual, we all agree on the same thing.
Where was that coming from? I'm like,
I know, but that was the amazing. It was so unlike him.
I know. Of all times,
if Zach Wilson were in the game, he would have gone back to pass and started running around. Just before he got out of the end zone, he would have thrown it out of bounds. That's their famous play. And
that's the best way he runs. But I was like,
talking about that, Ralph, I don't know why I was thinking about it, and this is out of left field, means nothing. I was thinking about Sam Darnold because I was thinking about all the quarterbacks, and I was trying to remember why we got rid of him. And I know you sent me his interceptions, but if you remember, there were like twice, I think this last season, he was running with the ball being chased, and he ran out of bounds 5 yards instead of throwing it out. Do you remember that?
Drove you crazy. That used to drive you crazy.
Yeah, you take a sack.
That's teachable, though. I mean, I think Zach learned not to throw it out of bounds at the other team's safety. But Sam Darnold, you talk about our future in quarterback. I'm looking at all these quarterbacks yesterday. We're having nice games, and I'm wondering, wow, Sam Darnold. Your guy, the guy you wanted for years, Marty, Baker Mayfield, he didn't play that well yesterday. Gardner Minshew had a lousy game yesterday, playing for a good team. Wow. I don't know, man. I don't know what Joe Douglas is going to do at this point.
Well, Ralph, put on your general manager's hat. What would you do? Who would you make a play for? Give me 1, 2, or 3 players. I was
sitting watching the game with Las Vegas Raider fans yesterday. And they were all saying, "Oh, I hear the Jets are going to go make a play for Carr." And I said, the Raiders are going to expect to get something back, plus dumping this huge contract. That is not a Joe Douglas move. So I don't see that happening unless the Raiders take at least half of his money. I think they're going to keep Zach Wilson. I don't think they're going to sign Mike White. I think someone else is going to is going to take the bait with him.
Ralph, do they draft a quarterback in like the 4th or 5th round just to draft?
Yeah, they could. That doesn't usually amount to very much.
Unless it's another team, it always amounts to something.
Yeah, I think they got to pick 2 offensive linemen. Their first 4 picks, they got to go out and buy another one too. Doesn't matter who they get a quarterback, if it's Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, on that offensive line, none of them are going to do a whole lot.
You're right.
That's got to be their number 1 priority. If their offensive line was very good, even Mike White and Zach Wilson would look a little better than they do now. And Joe Douglas is an offensive lineman. He knows it. I think he knows it, and he's been trying ever since he got here. He's made some bad decisions, unfortunately, but I think he understands how important it is.
Yeah, he does. Ray, what's your thoughts on quarterbacks in 2023 before we close this out?
Well, I don't think drafting one's going to be the answer, but I do think we could go through a list of guys available, which we've done a little bit before, but and it's always shifting. Minshew did look more pedestrian yesterday than he looked, which is surprising because it was the Cowboys defense, which is pretty good, that he looked so good against. And then yesterday was a little iffy. But there are several that I still wouldn't mind going after. And yeah, I think they'll keep Zach, but I don't know if the only way I'm going for Derek Carr is if he forces his hand and gets cut, and then we talk to him as a free agent.
Well, who is it that are there several guys that you're interested in? I'm curious.
I still like Minshew, but I don't know that he's.
Yeah.
I actually, I was afraid when we were going to draft him, but I'm starting to think that Baker Mayfield has eaten a little crow over the last year or so, and kind of humbled him a little, and he might actually, that one game for the Rams, not this past game, but the game before, he really looked sharp, and he kind of got. I think it was just because he had lost the team a little bit in Cleveland, because he took him to the AFC Championship game. And the next year he's got a bum shoulder and he plays on it, which that was a mistake anyway, that they should have sat him down. He's shown he can run an offense, and he's mobile enough to do things on the run. He's not a running quarterback, but he's mobile. He can move around and he can make plays, and he's got a decent arm. I wish he was, an inch or two taller so he could stand in the pocket a little more, but hey, I don't know why Lafleur doesn't get Zach out of the pocket. He's 6'3" or whatever, but I think he shows some stuff, and then obviously you have the possibility of Garoppolo or Carr or somebody. The only thing about Garoppolo, and Ralph, I think you called him glass.
You have to have a plan B with him.
Yeah, you do, and he knows the offense. He's very comfortable in it. I mean, as a matter of fact, he could probably coach Lafleur on what to call.
See, but what concerns me also about Garoppolo is I see Brock Purdy just step in and behind that team.
Right.
He looks really good, and so I wonder if
there's your offensive line
as
right
much.
there again.
And, we can't offer Garoppolo what San Francisco does. That makes me nervous.
Yeah,
I'm with you on Baker Mayfield. It's intriguing, almost like bring him in there, let him and Wilson go head to head. Best man wins. We'll see which of these guys can lose the team quicker. I would like that to bring someone who's sort of on Wilson's level and let Wilson fight it out, because he's been handed on a silver platter, and let's see him earn it.
And I don't think Mayfield would be all that expensive. That's keeps it, kind of realistic.
And he could probably look at the Jets as a team. I can be the starter on that team. I beat that guy out. That kind of mentality.
And his personality, I think he'd be like, New York. Oh yeah, I could be the king of New York.
Well, let me ask you this, Ralph, and I didn't follow it that close. What happened with him with Carolina? He just fizzled out.
That team is bad, and I would say, I don't know. I didn't follow it that closely either, but I know they were really dysfunctional last year, and I'm not going to.
He was on them this year. He
was on them early this year.
I mean, was he that bad? I don't understand. I mean,
maybe he'd be better under Wilkes now, though, than he.
Well, that's what I'm saying with him. Like Ray says, I don't think it would be a big investment to bring him in.
Ralph, what I'm saying, I love the guy too, but he just.
I don't love him, but
no. I like the idea having him on my team. I've always liked him, but is this guy just like so ultra toxic that you can't even have him close? I don't know.
It could be, but maybe on a team that is a little more stable. I don't know. Are the Jets considered a stable team? Their franchise, I don't know. You never know with these guys when their career is going to flip.
I happen to think the Jets. It's not. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but I think you could convince a quarterback saying, "Listen, we're going to draft 2 of our first 4 players, offensive line. We have a prospective All-Pro coming back in Elijah Vera Tucker. We have Becton coming back. I would still mention him. He's a first-round pick. I think it's
go with Max Mitchell before
or whatever. You could even mention him too. But you could make a pretty good selling point to try to overcome that, the Jets have a lousy offensive line. Now, I just want to put in my 2 cents. I love the idea of Baker Mayfield. I like the big three too: Gardner Minshew, Jimmy G. Again, you have to have a plan B, and Derek Carr. And I put him on the list. It'll never happen, but he's going to resign. I was always a Daniel Jones fan, and I was hoping he wouldn't have a great season. I was just hoping somehow they could like steal him out of New York, but it's never going to happen. So it's going to be, as Ralph, you said it, and we agreed, it's going to be an amazing off season, which is usually the Jets Super Bowl, right, Ralph?
Yeah. Quick question.
Yeah.
Given the choice, they're all other things being equal money wise, who would you rather them bring in, Minshew or Mayfield?
That's I think Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
I think because even with the toxicity about him with his teammates that we don't know everything about, I think he's got a little bit of an edge about him, and I do think he's a winner. And he's been in a couple of big games.
What about you, Ray?
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards Mayfield, which is funny because I didn't want him so much back in the draft. I was so afraid. I was so sure he was coming to us and Darnold was going to Cleveland.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
Like,
Darnold
oh,
had a pretty
God.
good game yesterday, actually.
He did. And but, once I saw him and started going, even when I was resigned to us drafting, I thought, well, as long as they, gear the offense around him and stuff, let's see what he can do. So I was already preparing for him back then. So, I would give him a shot. I think he's like cost wise and ability wise, I think he's the most likely option unless Derek Carr gets cut and we can negotiate a decent.
Right. Right. I was going to say that I don't want to pay anything for Derek Carr, only if he's cut.
No way.
Now, with that, one thing before we close this out, because his name was popping up all over the place. Ray, do you give up a #1 draft pick if they could get Sean Payton as coach? Let's say Woody John's just fed up with the whole thing. But would you do that?
I would be very tempted, but I think it's too soon to do that. I just don't think I'd want to go through that whole turmoil and upheaval and everything again. Although I really like Peyton as a coach, so he would be hard to turn down.
How many years has he been out of football now?
I don't know.
This was his second year, I think, wasn't it?
Sometimes it goes quickly.
It does.
These guys, yeah, they lose.
I want to say it's a second, but maybe it's.
But I agree with Ray. I think Sal's got one more year, definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So no, I don't see that happening. I do worry about guys when they sit out a couple of years, though.
Right. Right.
Gosh, it might have only been his second, but I thought this was his second year out. I thought.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be an incredible off season, but and we're going to get
it. Always is, like you say.
Yeah, that's it. All right, for Ralph Schrager and Ray Clifford and Marty Schupak and Jets Rewind, and I'll be on tomorrow for our 2-Minute Tuesday. I have a lot to say, and I'm going to attack. I forgot to bring it up. The Miles Austin. I'm going to mention it now. I just want to say this: NFL Roger Goodell. They're so hypocritical. I mean, I'm not saying that Miles Austin, the Jets receiver coach, was in the right, but to treat him and bring cameras in there when he's arrested, like he's the murderer out in Idaho, is so hypocritical when all they do is promote gambling. So I don't know if you guys want to say something about that, but that drove me crazy.
Well, he didn't bet on football. Apparently, they were able to verify that. So who cares if he wants to bet on horse racing or whatever? What is that? How does that hurt the game of football?
The NFL is all about image, and to talk about hypocrisy about them trying to keep the game safer for players. Oh, with the protocol, with concussions, and yet they have these guys playing Thursdays every time. When they're beaten up and. It's baloney, it's just it's the NFL for you. It's their PR, their image. That's all.
And they can't even get the protocol right because apparently Tua bounced his head off the ground and nobody did enough to have it checked out.
They have spotters up in the stands, and apparently they missed it. And Ralph, thanks for catching stuff. But you could say BS. It's all BS, you know that. And plus, within 3 years there's going to be 18 games too. In the NFL. They guarantee this. Okay, again, Ralph Schrager, down in Florida, and Ray Clifford out in Marysville, Ohio, who's poor Ray is in mourning because of his Buckeyes. And
Oh,
I'm
God.
in
That was.
I'm in Valley Cottage, New York. Until next time for Jets Rewind.